So let's look at the other two main control flow constructs in R, the while loop and the if-else conditional block. So looking first at the while loop. Now a while loop, like a for loop, runs a block of code a certain number of times, but it does so whilst a given expression evaluates to true. And once the expression evaluates to false, the loop stops. So here's a simple example. So first of all, I'm going to set this variable here equal to the value 5. So I'm setting I equal to 5. So there it is in the environment now. Now, I now have a while loop here, which is going to print the value of I over in the console, whilst that value is less than or equal to 5. So notice that the syntax is very straightforward. The word while, and then in brackets the expression to be evaluated to see if it's true or false, and then in the curly braces here you have the code that you want to run whilst this expression evaluates to true. So what this is going to do is it's going to check the value of I, is it less than or equal to 5? If so, print the value over here. It then reduces the value of I by 1, and then goes back to the beginning, checks the statement. If it's still true, print out I, reduce it by 1, and so on. And once I is no longer less than or equal to 5, the loop will stop. Now in fact, as things stand, this loop will not stop. It'll keep on going. It's what we call an infinite loop. Because if you look at it, you'll see that, of course, if I starts off at 5 and then is reduced by 1 each time, then it's always going to be less than or equal to 5. So this statement will always be true. And you'll see that and so the loop will just keep on going. Let me run it and you'll see exactly that. There we go. It's never stopping, of course, because it's always less than or equal to 5. Fortunately, I can stop it with the button up here that says stop on it. Let me just clear the console. Now that, with loops therefore, with while loops, you often need to include a little if statement here to break out of the loop once a certain other condition is reached to stop it continuing infinitely. So as you can see, what I've put here is a little if expression, if statement. I'll be looking at if blocks in more detail in a moment, but you can see exactly what this does. It checks to see if I is less than 0, and if so, it breaks the loop, it stops the loop. So what this does, of course, is I starts off at 5, it prints it out, goes to 4, which is not less than 0, so it will keep on going. But once, of course, this becomes -1, once I becomes -1, then this is true, and it will stop the loop. So let me comment that back out. So get rid of the comments so that this statement now runs. And if you look at it, you'll see what's going to happen is it's going to print 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. But then it will stop because once it goes to -1, this kicks in and it stops. So let me set I equal to 5 again to begin with, run the loop, and as you can see, we get the result that we wanted here. It prints out the value of I whilst I is less than or equal to 5, but not less than 0. So it's often the case with a while loop, you do need to include this if expression here with break in order to stop the loop, to make sure the loop ends rather than continuing infinitely. In fact, another way I could have done this to prevent an infinite loop is to write the expression here to be evaluated a little more, make it a little more complex by using a Boolean operator, in this case AND. So if you look at what I've got here, it's the same loop, but this time my expression is whilst I is less than or equal to 5 and greater than or equal to 0. Notice the Boolean operator here, and this is in fact the operator for scalars in R, which has a double ampersand. There is an operator for vectors which is a single ampersand. In this particular case you must use the scalar one, the double ampersand, in the while loop. So this checks to see if I is less than or equal to 5 and greater or equal to 0, and if so it prints it. It then reduces it by 1, checks again, and so on. And if you look at this, you'll see that this is going to do exactly the same as here. Whilst I is less than 5 and greater than or equal to 0, it will print it out. Once I goes to -1, then clearly it's no longer greater or equal to 0, and it will stop. So let me run that. First of all, set I equal to 5, run the loop, and you see we get exactly the same result as up here. So there's two ways you could do it in this case. You could use an if and break statement here to make sure the loop stops, or you could use a slightly more complicated expression here. So that's the while loop. Now I must admit that in my own R programming, my own R coding, I don't use the while loop very much. The for loop I use quite a lot, and the while loop very little, but it is there if you need it. Let's look now at the other main control flow construct, which is the if-else conditional block. Now again, this operates in exactly the same way as it does in other languages. First of all, you check to see if a particular expression is true. If so, you carry some code is run. If it's not true, then other code is run. So here I'm going to give a little example. So what I'm going to do first of all is to loading a little data set. Now this is one I've used before in the factors and tables video. Okay, let me just clear the console here. So let me reading this data set to a data frame. Here it is. I say it's the one I used previously. It's a simple data set, 20 cases involving 3 variables. 2 are categorical, gender and site, 1 numeric. Now what I want to do here is to loop through the gender variable, check to see if the value in the gender variable is M, is male. If so, I'm going to print out the letter M on the console. If not, I'm going to print the quote, not a man. So it's just a simple way of show how you can loop through a particular variable, check for particular values, and then do something depending on whether it's true or not. So in fact what I'm doing here therefore is combining the if-else conditional block with a for loop. So first of all I'm looping through this variable here, this vector, gender vector. So I'm using the standard syntax we did in the previous video. So it's for, then in brackets some variable name, in this case gen, so sort of shorthand for gender, then the word in, then of course the vector that you want to loop through, in this case the gender vector here. Of course I'm using the standard list style here to indicate that. So it's going to loop through this variable, taking on in each value, gen will take on each value in turn. So first of all gen will be M, and then F, and then M, and so on. Then I need to check the value of gen. So here's where I put the if block. So the syntax again is very straightforward. You put the word if, then in brackets the thing that you're wanting to check, the expression. So I'm checking here if gen is equal to M. And then in the first set of curly braces you put the code you want to run if this is true. And if that's all you wanted to do, check if it's true and print this, then you don't do anything else. But if you then also want to do something if it's false, then you use the word else. And then again in the second set of curly braces, the code to run if this is false. So here you can see it's going to check, is gen equal to M? If yes, if that's true, print what's in gen, which would be an M in this case. If not, if it's an F, print not a man. So let's run this code now. And there it does exactly what I wanted. It's looping through the gender variable, checking what's in there. If it's an M, it prints M. If it's an F, it prints not a man. And so you can see how you can use the if conditional block here, and often you combine it with a for loop, as I've done here, to loop through a particular variable and carry out certain code depending on the value that's in that variable. Okay, so that shows you how to use the while loop and the if-else conditional block.